The 2016 iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series is all about change. New teams, new drivers, new tracks, even a new logo. And oh yeah, there's a brand new car. After 5 years of competition, we say goodbye to the Williams FW31 and we say hello to the McLaren MP430. But this isn't just a brand new car, it's a whole new ballgame. And with it, we bring new excitement, new strategies, new technology. For example, energy recovery and drag reduction systems. There's a new way of thinking about racing, and for all the drivers participating, it's back to the drawing board, wiping the slate clean in the ever-consuming pursuit of perfection. One little slip-up, one wrong move on track, one poor strategy call, and it's over. That's the difference between coming up short and becoming champion and being $10,000 richer to boot. So yeah, change is in the air, but we're going to start getting answers on the 27th of February as the 7th year of iRacing World Championship competition kicks off. And you won't miss a thing, with every single race live on iRacing Live, coverage brought to you by RaceBot TV. So join us fortnightly from 1:30 p.m. GMT. Well, 2015 was an exciting World Championship Grand Prix Series, but this year, we reset everything. We reset the car, we reset the drivers, we reset the teams. This is going to be the most exciting championship since 2011. Gregor Hutu has won another championship, but the guys over at Coanda are looking to get retribution. Apex Racing, Radicals Online, Inex Racing, Vortex Racing, Iberica, and so many more. They want a piece of the action, and that is what we're going to talk about over the next 40 minutes here on RaceBot TV. Welcome to the 2016 iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series preview. Will Vincent along with Alex Simpson and Rachel Whiteford. Rachel, I'm going to come to you first. Last year was fantastic to talk about. The year before, fantastic also. But this year, we've got a new car. We've got new people to talk about. And I think that this year really is going to be something just a little bit special.
Completely agree, Will. Of course, the new car is the biggest thing this year. Anybody who's watched Formula One since the hybrid era came in, you'll know there is so much for the drivers to do, so much for the teams to do. And with what we're looking at, it's a game changer. We've gone from a car that is a few years old now. It's very simple, realistically, to drive, of course. Alex, you know, it's simple is relative, but at the same time, this car requires so much management, and it's totally new. We've had the same car now, the FW31, for 4 years now, so it's a whole different era. We'll see drivers who can cope with the change, drivers who can't cope, and I think it's going to be a really dynamic year.
Well, there's the thing immediately there, Alex. We're talking about the fact that this is a new car. Some people will compare it to the good old-fashioned F1, let's hit a button and try and overtake another driver, but there's so much more than that to do. If A, you're going to make the World Championship Series, and B, you're going to be competitive.
Oh, it's hugely different. I mean, just what we have to deal with in the car now. Obviously, fuel, I don't think it's going to be a major factor. The car's pretty efficient, so fortunately that's one thing we haven't got to worry about. But yeah, the ERS and the MG UK modes and settings, just getting that right so that we can save enough energy to have the ability to attack when we need to attack, ready, available to defend when we need to defend, and picking the right times to use it maybe when we do our pit stops so that we can make full advantage of the undercut. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all the teams play it and work it.
And the thing is, Alex, the last time we were in this situation was in 2011. 2011 was the only time in series history that Gregor Hutu has not won the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series, and that makes him slightly the underdog heading into this year, especially when you consider the fact that Coanda have a huge team, Inex Racing have a huge team, your guys over at Apex have a huge team, and Radicals have a huge team. We're going to get straight to the point. Do you think that maybe Redline are at a disadvantage because of who they have in their team and their strength of numbers compared to others?
I don't think so. I mean, I've seen them in sort of winter testing. They look just as quick as they did last season, to be honest. There's a few teams that look very quick, and there's a couple that I would have expected to see a little bit further up in some of the testing. Obviously, there's still 3 or 4 weeks to go now, so that could change again. That's the thing. But yeah, I don't think so. They look like they're on the money straight away, so they've got up to speed with the car, so they're going to be there or thereabouts again. And I think they're the mid-pack. There might be a few people that will come up and will be in and around until people really get into the nitty and gritty of the car, so they can eke out those last few tenths of a second lap time.
But of course, Rachel, this time last year we talked about the fact that iWCGPS scored back-to-back wins at the start of the season. It looked as though it was going to be redline domination, and then who came along but Mitchell de Jong for Commander Sim Sports. And from there on in, we had about 4 or 5 races that we were wondering, is this going to be a changing of the guard? It turned out that it didn't. But what we learnt last year was very simple. It doesn't matter how fast you are on race number 1. It's how fast you are about 6 or 7 races into the season that define whether or not you can get a top 10, a top 5, or maybe even a championship.
It's racing, Will, and the core principle of going for any championship is consistency. And the very fastest drivers sometimes can be consistent, but a lot of the time they'll make mistakes. We saw that from iWCGPS, incredibly talented driver, but a few little errors, and he's going to hate me for mentioning it, but I'm going to bring up Watkins Glen. And the panic that happened on turn 8 on lap 1 when Alexei lost the back end of the car. He saved it, of course, but everyone behind him panicked and went into different walls and different universes. But it's one of those things that he's a driver that is a bit by the seats of the pants, and he's not the methodical driver that Gregor Huttu is, and that really has aided Gregor's championship runs this year and the years preceding. He is a robot. He is consistent. He just runs exactly what he needs to do. And you can almost set your clock by Gregor Huttu. Alexei Usiakola, I'd say, is probably more like a stopwatch that's just been given an electric shock. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's wildly erratic. But I think that the main principle we have here, of course, is that, yeah, we have plenty of talented drivers, and one of Alex's teammates, Sebastian Job, is one I am watching so closely this year. He is amazingly talented, and as I said to Alex off air, if he can stop getting excited and hitting things, he will be an amazing rival for Gregor Huttu. But we have a new car. Some drivers will get that, some will not. As you mentioned, last time we swapped car, Gregor Huttu did not adapt quickly enough. We've seen him when he's out of position, as in not qualifying on the front row, and he's back in the mid-pack like he was at the end of last season, when he nearly threw the championship away to Martin Kroenke. He doesn't adapt well fast enough.
I agree. Here's the thing about Gregor Huttu. I've got the stats up now. Last year, he made 21 starts on iRacing with a winning percentage of 52.4%. He had a 90.5% Alex top 5 ratio, and that's why Gregor Huttu wins championships, because, yeah, he's won 50 wins, he's the most winningest driver in Grand Prix Series history. We'll go on about that for hours if we wanted to, but it's a top 5 ratio, and he did have some very bad qualifyings in 2015, but he was able to get back and be in position and not let that get to him, compared to the likes of Yakola, like the likes of Job, and likes a couple of other people in the series last year.
Yeah, I think the consistency this year with the new point system is going to aid him even more. Just the way it works now, the gaps between, where you finish is so much smaller now, so it's really going to help people at the back, but also if you can just bang in those consistent results time and time again, and from a DNF to say like a 6th place as a worst result, it's a huge difference in points. So that's really going to be the name of the game, I think, for who wins it. I mean, those guys at the front, if we just take it on the same performance as what they were last season and say, right, they're going to be the same speeds, I think the table would look a little bit different. I don't think it would look different at the top. And like you say, that really comes down to the fact that, those bad qualifying results he puts down, he sorts them out, goes on some, crazy strategies that should make him really heavy and slow at the start, but he just managed to get the car right at the end and pick up those few places.
And I think that's one of the things that, Alex, I remember so much about last season is Job had some fantastic qualifyings. And I think the one at Silverstone stuck out most in my head, where it's that whole thing. Sometimes when something goes wrong, the worst thing you can do is spend your entire race focusing on that. He lost a couple of positions at the start, which then put himself into a bad place when he got to his first pit stop. He ended up having a bad pit stop as a consequence. So what could have been a podium turned into, I think it was like at the rear of the top 10. And I use Job as the example there, but there's a couple of drivers that have had that recently. And it's not, in NASCAR, we always talk about that if you're not first, you're last, kind of like Ricky Bobby mentality. That's not true. If you're not first, you got to fight for second. If you're not going to be second, you fight for third. And you've got to remember what your goal is midway through the race.
Yeah, I think, Seb, like you say, he's a perfect example of that. And it's very easy for drivers that haven't been in that position as well. We're used to seeing Gregor, Martin, and a lot of the top name drivers in and around. But I think for Sebastian, it was the first time he'd been on the front row. That's quite a daunting experience, and he's only a young lad as well. So nerves were pretty rife for him on that day. And you're right. I think he's red mist settled in a little bit for that poor start, and you're right. He just tried to eke out a few seconds in the pit stop, got himself a pit stop penalty.
Got to say though, Alex, of course, we do say he got a penalty. He had to come down for a stop and go.
Yeah.
But he still finished in the top 10.
Yeah.
Which is an incredible recovery drive for somebody who's made a mistake. And as a driver, I could say, when you've made a mistake, you've got a penalty. Yeah. The chance of you speeding on that penalty is so high. The chance of you making a mistake because you're rushing, because you're trying to make up time is so high. He made one mistake. He granted entered pit road faster than the average fighter jet, but he made a mistake. Then he didn't make another one. He consistently did what he had to do, and he made his way through the field on a track where we saw very little passing. And it's incredible talent.
I think it's a good point. It just goes to show that the qualifying wasn't a fluke or anything like that. It wasn't just a good lap. We had genuine pace that week, and I think after that race, the team, we sort of sat down and spoke with him, and I think you saw a marked improvement in the level of sort of his performance, consistency, less mistakes come out, and I think we've worked on that quite a lot over the winter period as well. So really try to his mental game is going to be up there this year. I mean, he already has a wise head on some very young shoulders, but he's going to be very, very quick, and he's going to be very intelligent about what he does next season.
Certainly, and it's very telling because I remember watching Sebastian as a younger driver, even he is now. Of course, he's still a young driver, but when he was racing in the Monday Night Skip Barber series, of course, which we do have on Monday nights, it's my favourite series, but he was quite immature then. He made mistakes. He was incredibly fast, but you're right, he has had a marked maturity. He's come along as a driver more, and you've seen those mistakes become less and less and less frequent. And he's one of those people I think could be an absolute jackhammer next year, or this year, and the year afters. He's got a huge well of talent, and I've always said, once he manages to stop crashing and making mistakes, he will be unbeatable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the one thing that comes into my mind there is the Felipe Massa mentality. You look at how good Felipe was in 2008, and you look at it comes down in some cases to who can make the fewest mistakes at most important times of the season. Of course, it's very easy to talk about the new guard, but Rachel, we've got to talk about the guy who came home second in the championship for the second year in a row in 2015. That was, of course, Martin Cronkite. And as we release the Cronkite for 2016, look at his stats. 18 races he entered in 2015. He won 5 of those. However, his win ratio, his top 5 ratio, I take that back. His top 5 ratio, 100%.
Incredible consistency, and Martin's a lovely guy. He's a talent that's just beyond compare. He's up there with really the greats of the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series. He's one of the few guys that you can really mention in the same breath as Gregor Hutu. His diversity as well. We've seen him in prototypes this year. We've seen him in GT cars, and it just does not stop at the Formula 1 car. He's not a one-trick pony. And to come second twice in a row, he's got to be on fire. He's got to have his blood boiling this year. He wants that last top step, and he wants it to be a new champion.
Yeah.
Everyone's... I don't mean to be derogatory to Gregor when I say it, but everyone's sick of seeing the same champion. It's Sebastian Vettel syndrome. It's Michael Schumacher syndrome. people are lining up to beat him now, and every year that goes past, it's getting bigger. And Martin has been the closest of anybody. I think Martin really is one of the few people that can beat him, unless Sebastian has an incredible season this year. It could be him.
Indeed so. And let's not forget, of those 18 starts, 2 of those were races that were 12 hours or longer. So he completed a 100% top 5 ratio, including a 24-hour race and a 12-hour race. And that
Well, it wasn't
shows...
all 24 hours, Will.
Well, I know, but still, when you got to, I mean, that's the thing. You talk about, we'll talk about this in another time. We'll talk about the fact that in some cases, you're going to be running non-stop for an hour and a half. But Alex, you compare that to running 4, maybe even 5 hours in a row in a 24-hour race. And this is where the other stat becomes fantastic for Martin Kroenke's average incident per race last year, including 2 long endurance races, 2.55 incidents per race. That's outstanding.
Yeah, amazing. I think of myself as a pretty safe driver, but I'm way up above that, probably at least double, I think. So yeah, that just says something. Amazing.
And the thing is, yeah, it's a slight increase on what he had in 2014. 2014 he had 1.87 per race. That's huge, shall we say. No, it's not. But Rachel, of course, there's one person that we always kind of forget about now at Coanda, and that's the guy who won the 2011 championship, the only other person to have won a championship apart from Gregor Huttu. That, of course, is Hugo Louise in what realistically I'm going to have to say now is the second Coanda Sim Sports car. And Hugo might hate me for saying it, but it is. If you look at the stats, it clearly is.
It really is, and we love Hugo. He's one of the RaceSpot TV family. In fact, he's a co-owner of the business with you, Will. Hugo, I've got to know quite well, and I think he's a lovely guy. I think he lost a little bit of the passion last year. Of course, he did have to go out of 2013 season, of course, halfway through with personal issues. 14. But he had some really good races last year. Let's not forget the race at Montreal, where he came second to Martin Kroenke's teammate. A stellar drive, an incredible drive at Watkins Glen as well. And I've seen a different Hugo Louise this year. He's not as obsessed with his own performance, and I think that's a good thing. He overanalyzes himself too often, and with a new car, there's a new chance. And of course, he adapted very fast, let's not forget, to the Williams.
Indeed.
And he beat Gregor Huttu. So, could we see the return of Hugo Louise to the top step of that championship podium? It's entirely possible.
I think the thing on that one is that he was obsessed about certain parts of his performance. He was obsessed, Alex, about, where he's going to finish. But as a consequence, there's certain parts of his performance last year which were sloppy. His pit stops. We started making jokes about how bad his pit stopping was. And as a driver, there have been about 4 or 5 drivers last year that threw away podiums because of the fact that they could not get on and off a pit road. And yet, it's fantastic to drive around and do an entire fuel run. It's those last 20 seconds when you come on towards pit road, stopping your box, that are probably more important than anything else.
When you're in a pack, hugely important, and it's not tested enough. We don't do enough testing. I'll sit here right now and say we don't test that enough. It's so critical. We will put thousands of laps in, maybe doing testing over the 2 weeks up before a race, and yet we hit the reset button every time we want to go and try again, rather than actually driving it back and doing that. And it's something that a lot of people do, I think. And I wonder some of the drivers who are really, really quick and nail it every time, if they don't put a fair decent amount of attempts into that. And it's very underlooked. I think.
It is, and I mean, I'm a oval specialist myself, and I do drive road, but at the same time, I'm an oval specialist. The times are so much closer, and the amount of time you have, of course, to gain and to make mistakes is a huge thing. And pit stops are so vital. And you're right, not enough people practice them, even at the top level, and you can gain so much on pit road. You need to take advantage of free time.
Indeed. And you compare, in many cases, pitting in the Grand Prix and World Championship Series to the likes of qualifying at Indy. And, the gaps can be so small. And we see it so often on RaceSpot TV, on Sunday nights in particular, on Sunday Night Skippies. A good pit stop can gain you 2 or 3 positions. A bad pit stop can lose you 10. We're going to step aside for just one moment, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back with more discussion as well as a look at who we think is going to win the 2016 championship after these messages. You're watching Racesport TV on iRacing Live. This is the 2016 iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series preview. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this 2016 iRacing.com World Championship Grand Prix Series preview show here on Racespot TV and on iRacing Live. Will Vincent, Rachel Whiteford and Alex Simpson. We've talked about some of the bigger names in this series, but Alex, now we've got to talk about the people that's punched their ticket and got themselves into the 2016 World Championship Series. Of course, they are those who qualified from the 2015 iRacing.com Pro Series of Road Racing.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing the battles towards the mid-pack and back. I mean, I think it's worth pointing out as well that it's the top 30 that get a license or retain their license this season. So, slightly bigger pie that everybody's trying to get a little piece of. And I think when you look at the top 10 from the Pro Series, I mean, they've got stiff competition. That top 25 from last season is really, really tough. And I think any one of those top 10 are going to sort of fit in there nicely. So the guys just outside of that are going to have a massive job. But again, the car could make all the difference. So, like I said, some teams are performing well, some perhaps not so much. They haven't quite got the setups down at the moment. So I think let's just see how it goes. I think the racing's going to be just as fierce in that sort of 25th place as what it's going to be in the top 5 or 6. Mid-pack's going to be crazy. DRS trains everywhere. Everybody trying to use ERS on each other at the same time. It's just going to be insane for them. I think. It's worth pointing out as well that the car is easier to drive than the Williams ever was. And that's going to make
it easier to drive fast. That's the question.
Well, yes, fast as well, because you can drive it insanely fast, but then you run out of power very, very quickly, and that's when the car all of a sudden becomes a lot easier to drive. So their engine modes will be turned down for a good portion of the race, and it's not so easy to make mistakes. So I think those mid-pack battles for you guys to cover is going to be quite tricky.
We'll talk about the driving side of it in just a moment's time, but Rachel, we remember last year that we had Thrustmaster Movano come in, and they really were getting themselves top 10s from the get-go. But last year, they had the ability to go from a Williams to a Williams. This year, they can't. Any team that's coming into the series have had to fight their way through the iRacing Grand Prix Series, through the Pro Series of Road Racing, in a Williams, and now they got to change like everyone else in McLaren. They have no advantage at all heading into the season. In many cases, they actually have a disadvantage because not being able to spend the time running in McLaren because of the fact they've had to be competing for places in the Pro Series, especially when you look at P15 through 30 that qualified for the championship.
I kind of agree and kind of don't agree with that, because at the same time, a lot of the actual big teams haven't perhaps also done the same length of practice. Well, Alex and his guys definitely have, but Hugo Luis told me he's going to be annoyed that I've said this, but I think he's only just driven the car last weekend.
He did.
So some of the really big names, might have the same if not less practice, but at the same time they're on a level playing field. everyone's switching to the new car. This Pro Series was in the same car it's always been in, so there is a level playing field on who actually gets in and who stays in based on the FW31. And of course, this new McLaren, big shift in terms of how you drive the car. I believe Fernando Alonso once said that you're not a racing driver anymore, you are a pilot. You are operating the car, and it's a huge difference. But as Alex was saying, different fuel modes are going to make strategy so different, and when everyone's turned their fuel modes down to save fuel, or to save, more importantly, the kinetic energy recovery in the car, you're going to have basically who's got the most left over wins games. It's going to be groups of cars who are all struggling to eke out that little bit more power than somebody else, and it will really make things exciting. I think it will make things interesting. We'll have a lot of diversity, but I think the younger drivers here are going to be the ones who will adapt the fastest. Drivers like Sebastian Job, drivers like Mitchell de Jong, they're going to be the ones that come through. You mentioned Master Movano, of course. They've just come through now to the big time, really. But we've always seen them in the top rungs of things like Neo and the Road Warrior series. They are very fast in multiple cars. And I think the teams that do have cars in multiple series, like Coanda, like Redline, like Apex, they are going to be the ones that really adapt the fastest because they can hot swap cars.
You should look at some of the stats that Movano have been putting out this season. I mean,
look at Neo. They've won like half of the races in their GT1 class.
Yeah.
They are quick. And, as I said, the teams that can hot swap to different cars are going to be the ones that adapt to this one better.
Let's talk about the two teams then that really are part of this, what I like to call diverse sim racing teams. You've got, on one hand, Vortex Sim Racing, Rachel, who started off as an IndyCar team back in 2012, and since then they've expanded first to GT, then into the Formula One World Championship Series, and last year they had a driver or so that competed. This year, the Vortex invasion has arrived.
Oh, it has, and there's some brilliant drivers coming through from them. We've seen them again in Neo and Road Warrior. We've seen them in prototypes and GT cars. And, the Vortex team, it's evolved. And one thing I definitely noticed from them, and especially their IndyCar past, is they are very good in traffic. And we are going to have a traffic year this time round. Gone, I think, will be the big spread out fields after about 15 laps in the World Championship Grand Prix Series. I think with the energy saving, we're going to see packs of cars forming. And Vortex are used to having packs of cars on ovals and Indy cars. So I think they are going to be a real threat.
I've got a lot of time for Michael, and he's going to be their main man. He's a really great guy, and I've raced him for years now in different series. And, I'm delighted that he's there, so we've got a bit of old rivalry going on, so I'm looking forward to continuing that. But he's very, very quick, and his Pro Series performance as well, the way he come through the pack.
Fantastic.
I mean, on Johnny's little podcast that he was doing, sorry for calling it little there, Johnny. but for that, I mean, he was talking, he wasn't the best qualifier. He struggled a little bit with qualifying, but started to pick that part of these, the whole package up towards the end of the season, and look at the differences. I'm gutted for him that he disconnected in that last race. He was doing so well, but I think he was doing these strategies, and he was coming from like 18th into sort of like 5th, 6th, 7th place. So
that's going to be the real important part of this. And it's often said that being a racing car driver is not about how fast you can drive, it's how well you can race. And it's one thing putting the car on pole every week if you can't keep it there. And there are drivers like him who can race through traffic, they can make up places, and if you can then have the speed to race at the front every day, perfect. But look at Gregor Hutu in 2014, he started back in P9, P10, around that mark, and he was swamped. He couldn't handle being back there. He was out of position. And drivers that are never out of position are going to be really important.
I want to make one point about Dinkel as well here. You talked about you racing with him for a long time in IndyCar. Dinkel knows about the idea of push to pass for the last year or so already. He's got that advantage because he's used it. There's a couple of people that don't fully understand the strategy behind push to pass, the use of ERS, etc., Alex. Dinkel will be dominant in that midfield, especially the first two races, because of the fact he knows it, he's raced it. He doesn't need to adapt to a new car and a new set of circumstances.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tool that he's had at his disposal for some time, and like you say, it's people out there just going to really, are they going to time it right to use it? I mean, it's as much as a defensive tool as it is an offensive one. And, with the IndyCar, it's fair to say that you had to be far more restrictive on when you use it and actually use it absolutely the right times, because you only have it 10 times in a whole race.
Yeah.
We have...
Every lap if you need to.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's restricted on the amount of time or the energy that we've got, but for best case, we can pretty much just save it up and hammer it on every single straight of every single lap if we wanted to, until it's depleted, to try and get a move complete. So, but yeah, I think he's going to pick and time his moves very well, because he's just absolutely used to it. He knows when the opportunity is going to come up. Right, now is my chance, and you'll see him make the moves.
That really does lead us onto a perfect segue here, Alex, because, of course, we go from Vortex, who are a new mid-pack team, which I say, of course, with perfect honesty, and I really appreciate the work they do, to another mid-pack team who have been at the front of the mid-pack for many years, and they are Radicals Online. Of course, they've had Jeremy Boutaloop. He scored podiums. He's done some great charges for the field, to the likes of Mogar Philo, to the likes of Yunus Nakurin. And Nakurin this year, I think, is going to have a fantastic season. The one person they are missing, however, is the person who set the series alight in the latter part of 2015, and that was Matt Backham, because he's heading over to the Blancpain World Championship Series.
Yeah, I'm gutted that he's not in it, actually. When you've got someone who's as talented as that, you want to see them up there. I mean, he was in the top fives pretty much the end of the season, all race long, and fighting and battling. The people we want to see, they're very exciting driver as well. So, I don't know the reasons behind why he didn't take the licence, but I'm sure he's going to do well in the Blancpain. And it's a driver that we're going to miss, to be honest.
I think, Rachel, that really kind of sets a tone for a lot of these mid-pack drivers this year. Are they stretching themselves too thinly? Because every time I talk about double duty, I always think about Jake Sturgis. Of course, he's one of about 3 drivers who I've seen really be competitive on doing double duty in the NASCAR and the Grand Prix World Championship Series. Richard Towler, of course, is the only person to have ever won in both, but Jake has come pretty close. But as we now go from 2 to 3, we start asking, where are you most likely to get yourself a podium? Where are you most likely to do your team proud?
And I think with the amount of championship series we have now, it really does spread those drivers thinner, and it makes the drivers who are multi-talented much more valuable to teams. Of course, you've got the likes of, and I've completely forgotten the guy's name now, from Formula One who ran in Le Mans this year, just gone. Someone's going to remind me quite rapidly.
It was Hulkenberg.
Nico Hulkenberg.
Yeah, that's the one.
Tip of the tongue. Nico Hulkenberg, of course. Yes, thank you. He was competitive in both, and there are drivers like that we have. Martin Kroenke is one of them, of course. But Matt Backham, incredibly talented in a GT car, incredibly talented in the Formula One car, and I'm honestly disappointed he's not going to be in the championship this year, because he was entertaining to watch in the latter half of last season. But at the same time, he's just as good in a GT car, so I think we're going to have a much more interesting time seeing him in that, and I think that's why he chose to go down the GT route, is because it's closer racing, there's more time side by side, and I think he enjoys racing.
So, of course, Alex, one other thing that's worth talking about is we talked about the top third of the Grand Prix series so far. There are other drivers who are what I like to call ones to watch. We have 1 or 2 every year. Of course, a couple of years ago, it was Kazuki Omishima. Last year, arguably, it was Matt Backham in the final third of the season. Of course, we had De Jong at the start of it. This year, there are a couple of drivers who I would like to put into that category of ones to watch.
Yeah, I think a team that sort of stands out to me is probably iBerica Racing, return of Pablo.
Go Pro!
Which is going to be great. I think he's a great driver, and it's good to see him back in the car. I'm glad that he did the Pro Series in the Williams. I thought he might not do it because he just hated the car for a bit, but yeah, he's back, and the team around him as well are strong. I think they've just lost Marin, unfortunately, to Orion. So interesting the way the driver moves can happen, but I think Danny is very, very quick as well. Those two working together.
There was
a time,
if they get another. Actually, in the final round of the Pro Series, when unfortunately Pablo had a hardware issue, and he couldn't finish the race.
I believe I can fly.
Well, there was that too. But he thought for the longest time that he hadn't made it, and once the points were applied, he did. And I think he will be a real talent. I've seen him racing DTM cars, GT cars, and he's quick in everything. So Pablo Lopez is going to be a great one to watch.
one other thing about that as well is we've talked about Orion. Now, it seems to be every year when I start thinking about the Grand Prix series, I forget about Orion. And I don't know why, because they always seem to end up... Ilkka Happala is a fantastic driver. If you want to have a driver guaranteed to get top 10s half the time, go and call up Ilkka Happala. But I thought last year they were going to have themselves that resurgence. And then De Jong left to go to Coanda. This year they bring a driver on board. Is that finally Orion's resurgence?
Well, I've seen them on track, and I can say now they look quick. They look very, very quick. So not only have they got Maron, they've also got Riley Preston as well. Riley looks very quick, so they've definitely bolstered their team. Obviously, Al back up there as well, Davey as well. So there's a strong unit around them, and I think they're going to be pushing every race. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Ilkka up and around that podium area again.
Question, Rachel, I want to know who's going to win the 2016 championship, but also who is going to be your podium. Overall, when all is said and done, when we finish the final round of the championship, who will be P1, P2, P3?
Right, well, I've got two answers to the first question. The first answer is I'd like it to be Hugo Luis. I think he's the new car guy, so he could adapt the fastest. But I think it could actually be Sebastian Job. Young, adaptable, fast, more mature now. I think he's going to be my actual pick for the championship this year. If I'm going to go for a podium, I'm going to say it's going to be either Job or Luis in first, Hutu in second, and Kroenke in third.
Really to Kroenke, but only to P3. Alex, of course, you're thinking that you want one of your Apex guys to come out in at least the top 3 of the championship. Do you think that Job can do it? Do you think that any of your other teammates can do it? Can you do it, for all we know?
Well, I mean, personally, I've got a goal, and I said this on Johnny's podcast as well that will be released soon, is that I want a podium myself, at least in a race. So, I'm going to absolutely give it everything I've got this season to get that. I think Sebastian can do it. I don't want to put piles and piles of pressure on him at all like that. There's no expectation from the team on that, but just
there is from us, though, just to let you know, Seb, if you're watching, there's definitely pressure from us.
But I want to see him up there, so I'm definitely going to put him on my podium at the end of the season. And I think I hate to say it, but I think Gregor's got this year. Redline looked too quick in the testing,
I don't know.
I think we've only seen a couple of Coanda guys out there so far, but I think Gregor, then Martin.
Well, that is all we have time for. I never make picks because if I do, apparently I'm seen as controversial. But hey, what I do know, really? I know, right? So the only thing I can say is that I think it's going to be a fantastic season. 2016, the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series will be phenomenal, and it's part of one of 3 series that will be here on Racebot TV and on iRacing Live. We've got ourselves the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series powered by iRacing. We have ourselves the iRacing Blancpain GT World Championship Endurance Series as well. So much to talk about this coming year. And don't forget, we're your home of the biggest sim racing broadcast in the world. Thank you so much to Alex Simpson and to Rachel Whiteford. I have been Will Vincent. We shall talk to you all next time. Bye-bye.